Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. I just thought I'd introduce myself, just to follow on from what Paul said. As you can see, my name's Barry Taylor, and I'm a lecturer in archaeology here at the University of Chester. And my research is really interested in thinking about the way that plant communities formed and developed in the relatively distant past, thinking particularly about the period of rapid environmental and climatic change that occurs towards the end of the last ice age in Britain. I'm also interested in people, not just plants. I'm interested in the way that people in this distant period of the past interacted and engaged with the plants that they shared their world with. But I don't want to talk about this aspect of my research today. What I actually want to talk to you about is something that my research is increasingly leading me to believe, and that is that we need to fundamentally change the ways in which we think about plants and the ways that we engage with plants in the contemporary world, and that we need to do that both to improve the lives of plants and of humans. So I just want to ask a couple of quick questions just to get things started. Right, so first off, can you put your hand up if you've spoken to a plant today? Oh, good. Couple? Excellent. Yes. Nice. Yeah, it can be any sort of plant. Doesn't have to be a long conversation. A quick hello will do as well. Yep. Okay, brilliant. So a couple of people there. It's hard to see under the light. So put your hands down if you put them up. Question number 2. Put your hands up if you've spoken to an animal today. Yes. Much more. Many more people. Okay. So again, it doesn't be a long conversation, just a quick chat and a hello. And that's not much of a surprise. We generally, most of us are quite happy talking to animals, don't often admit to talking to plants, tend not to talk to plants in company, in public. But if you do talk to plants, I just want to tell you, turns out you're not alone. So in 2013, in Australia, in the city of Melbourne, the City of Melbourne authorities came up with a project to try and help them better manage the more than 70,000 urban trees that were under their care. And to do this, they set up an online system where they mapped the location of every single tree in the city, put this online, and then allocated each of the trees a unique identifying code. And the plan is that you could use this system, look up a tree, find its code, click on it, and send a message to the city authorities if there was something that you were concerned about that tree, if you thought that tree needed help. But that is not what people used it for. Instead, people used this system to send messages directly to trees. Between 2013 and 2018, more than 3,500 messages were sent by people to the trees of Melbourne. Some of these messages simply said hello, said hi. Some messages commented on the aesthetic qualities, complimented trees on how they looked. Some people sent messages where they reminisced of times that they'd spent in the company of these trees. But a common theme in all of the messages, or many of the messages, was gratitude. People sent messages to trees and thanked them for the things that the trees did. This might be casting shade in a particularly appropriate place, providing homes for birds, or simply for making people happy. Now, this story is picked up by media around the world, and it is seen as a feel-good story. It is treated with a combination of amused surprise. The news media reflects on this crazy happening that was going on in Australia with people emailing trees. But why is it that we're so surprised that people would want to speak to a tree? And why is it that we find it surprising that they might want to say thank you, to express their gratitude? Why don't we talk to plants? The reason lies in the ways in which we think about the nature of botanical life. We're taught that plants are a lower form of life in comparison to to humans and animals. Right? So, and this is because plants don't have an obvious central nervous system. There's nothing that resembles a brain. Plants don't have any apparent sensory organs, and they have no obvious forms of communication. So unlike humans and animals, we tend to think that plants are essentially passive, that they respond simply mechanistically to external stimuli. They're incapable of acting independently on their own in the world. And from this perspective, plants are little more than a bit of green machinery. And you'd no more say thank you to a plant for growing in a particular way than you'd say thank you to your bike for taking you on a journey or your phone for receiving a call. It's simply a function of what it does. Now, this way of thinking about plants doesn't just make it difficult for us to talk to them, it's also making it difficult for us to see them. Since the 1990s, researchers in both Europe and the US have been noting a tendency within the general population for people to not notice plants in their own environment. It's a phenomenon known as plant blindness. If you wonder if you're afflicted with this, just think for a moment and try and name 3 different plants that were growing at the entrance of Kingsway campus and that you passed as you got here. If you can do that, great. But most of us, it turns out, can't. Most of us struggle to recall the plants that we encounter on a day-to-day basis. At the same time that we're struggling to talk to plants and see plants, plants are disappearing from other aspects of our lives. They're disappearing from our culture. They're disappearing from our language. In 2007 and again in 2012, the Oxford Junior Dictionary removed a number of words relating to the natural world that included the names of plants and parts of plants. And they replaced these words with words that they felt were more relevant to the contemporary world. Words like cut and paste and blog in a dictionary for 7-year-olds. So all in all, it seems that we have successfully weeded plants out of our consciousness, out of our culture, out of our language, even out of the lives of children. And none of this has been good for plants. Plant blindness has been directly attributed to lower levels of funding for conservation and protection for plants, low levels of legal protection for endangered plants. And it's also been seen as an underlying cause for what has been described as a growing extinction of botanical teaching at all levels of education in Britain today. And this comes at a time when plants really need us to see them. Around 1/5 of all plants in Britain are currently considered at risk. And that's taking place in a global context of botanical decline, where around 45% of the world's plant species are currently considered at threat of extinction. And just to remind everyone, no plants means no other forms of life on Earth, including us. But I'd argue that our increasing separation from the botanical world isn't doing us much good either. At a time where technology is supposed to be making us more connected than ever, we're seeing incidences or feelings of loneliness and isolation increase. And at the same time, we have this epidemic of anxiety and deteriorating mental health, particularly, though not exclusively, amongst younger people. So I'd argue that we need to fix both of these problems at the same time. We need to rethink our relationships with plants, reconnect with our botanical neighbours in a way that improves life for all of us, find ways of living better together. And we need to start by remembering how to see plants. And this is easier than you might think. There is nothing natural or intrinsically human about our tendency at the moment to not see or to ignore or overlook plants. In fact, when we look at it historically, our current relationship with the botanical world is actually quite unusual. And I'll just give you one example. There are over 1,600 native species of plants in Britain, and all of them have names. And I don't just mean the scientific names that are given to them by botanists as a way of classifying them. I'm talking about the common names, the folk names. Names like foxglove, hart's tongue, bogbean. These are names that are centuries old and in many cases still in common use today. The people that named these plants certainly weren't blind to them. These names describe plants in terms of the way they look, their resemblance to other things, and the places they grow, and the functions that they serve for humans. People clearly wanted to remember the names of these plants. They wanted to see these plants, and they wanted to pass these names down to other generations. And we could do that too. Every one of us can relearn these names. We're fortunate to live in a city which is teeming in plant life. So next time you head to campus, head to work, walk to the pub, start looking out for the plants that you see on your way. Try naming them. By all means, use a mobile phone app. They're great. They're absolutely brilliant. But just remember, the app will identify the plant, but you need to remember it. Repeat its name every time you walk past it. Don't stop at their names, learn their stories. Find out about how these plants have become entangled in the lives of humans in the past. And don't limit yourself to native plants. Over half of the plants growing wild in Britain today have been introduced. Learn their stories. Where did they come from? How did they get here? And as you're learning their names, take the time to appreciate the incredible things that plants do. Look at how they take over places that humans abandon, the speed at which they just crawl over across the walls, through the windows, through the roofs, the ways in which, in doing so, they create new habitats for other forms of life to thrive. And ask yourself, does it matter that these actions didn't have conscious intent behind them? Does it make the results any less meaningful or important? And as you reach out to plants, you might find that plants reach back to you and help you to live a better life. It's well known that being around plants and other aspects of the natural world has positive effects on our well-being. But research is increasingly showing that we have to engage with plants to get that well-being effect. So seeing plants, saying their names, learning their stories improves our lives too. And I'd argue that plants have more to offer, and it's not just me that says this. Oh, yeah. The author and botanist Robin Wall Kimmer describes plants as our teachers. So we need to start asking ourselves, what is it that we can learn from plants? Just a few examples. Taking the time to identify plants, learning and remembering their names, improves our concentration, our focus, our ability to concentrate and focus on small details. Our observational skills improve as we try and pick out individual plants within hedges, or see an individual plant amongst a sea of stems and flowers. And also, learning plant names teaches us patience and resilience as we forget and then have to re-remember them time and time again. It teaches us patience and the fact that nothing comes quickly and we have to take that time in order to learn. Interacting with plants, being with plants, helps us, it helps our resilience, just as it will then also help plants to thrive in the world. So, when you leave today, don't forget to say hi to a plant as you're passing, because maybe that plant might just say hi right back. Thank you very much.